Is Trump finally feeling the heat to get back on the Bird app? Well, he's not on yet, but Benny Johnson is claiming the Ron DeSantis presidential announcement on Twitter Spaces last night has compelled Donald Trump to return to Twitter. Former President Trump, of course, did not hold any punches after DeSantis' campaign kickoff last night. He posted this on Truth Social he posted this spoof on his Instagram.
Can I please make my big announcement now? Everyone just...
Hello!
Just shut up, George.
Can somebody just mute George?
Dick, could you try not to cough on the...
Okay, so how are we going to take out Trump, you guys?
Guys from the FBI, this is not a private call. This is a public Twitter space. Everyone can listen in.
God damn it.
Also, in a Truth Social post from last night, Trump wrote, "Wow, the DeSantis Twitter launch is a disaster. His whole campaign will be a disaster. Watch." In another post, he said, "Tim Scott's presidential launch, even with the broken microphone, don't pay the contractor, Tim, was by far the best presidential launch of the week. Rob's was a catastrophe."
Oh, man, he wasn't done there. There was a video that was tweeted out also exemplifying in visual form what he saw as the crash and burning of Ron DeSantis' campaign. I think we have that clip as well. Of course.
Did Elon Musk build that rocket?
Yeah, exactly. An allusion to the fact that this partnership with Elon Musk is evoking all of these
So that call
spacecraft.
had Satan, George Soros,
The parody call.
Hitler, Dick Cheney.
Yep.
Kind of a normie figure among those people.
The FBI.
The FBI, of
They
course,
didn't
always
realize
listening.
that it wasn't
Always
a private-
listening. Yeah, like Trump has an actual sense of humor. I mean, this is something that's going to hold DeSantis' back, is that so far he seems kind of stiff, kind of humorless, and Trump is genuinely entertaining. I saw
Elon, by the way. It's
Yeah.
weird for him to have allied himself with someone who doesn't seem to actually be bringing what he needs to the table. Have we all forgotten? It was just a few months ago that Dave Chappelle, who is a genuinely charismatic, outgoing, funny, obviously person, brought his friend Elon Musk on the stage in San Francisco, and he was booed for 10 minutes straight. At some point, David Chappelle felt compelled to say, "Oh, it's only the poor people in the back booing," which did not help things with the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is this the person that you want on board when you're trying to compete with someone who has the natural public speaking abilities and humor of Donald Trump?
Yeah. I don't know. That's not everything. Obviously,
Yeah, sure.
Trump has a lot of drawbacks as well.
Sure.
And what I, heard from DeSantis is that he is the anti-woke candidate, and he's hoping that's going to get him through the primaries. And we're going to find out. There's no way to guess whether it will or not. We don't know. Trump, I don't know. He might just. Benny Johnson is claiming that he is going to come back to Twitter, but maybe he should. And Twitter, as I said yesterday, and I've said a lot of times the last few days, is becoming a conservative social media platform where I think if you want to be engaging in conservative dialogue, you need to have a place there. The Tucker Carlson show is going to be there. The Daily Wire is going to be there. So to imagine Trump not there at all, he's missing something. On the other hand, obviously the platform is against him somewhat. I mean, he has fans on the platform, don't get me wrong, but Elon is fully in for DeSantis, so maybe Trump just, boycotts this whole thing personally and gets out his message other ways.
Well, what I find to be kind of remarkable is that Trump's not on Twitter, but Trump's presence was deeply felt on Twitter last night. Those memes did numbers. They had reach. People were saying that Ron DeSantis was struggling to trend, even though there was this huge launch happening. People were pointing out that he is fudging his viewership numbers. Remember, Elon Musk created a new metric of views, literally, not if someone actually stops and watches the video, but just if someone scrolls past a tweet, which gives you much, much higher numbers than the traditional media play numbers that we've been using since time immemorial.
We have an internet show. Every view counts. Don't start getting really, really precious about what counts as a view.
But it smells of desperation.
I don't know about that. I think we're too quickly writing the eulogy for the DeSantis campaign.
Wait a minute. When Tucker Carlson launched his video on Twitter and got legitimately millions of views, We were using real numbers. Suddenly, when we're talking about Ron DeSantis, we're talking about a video that actually has 4 million views being advertised as having 10 million views because of DeSantis' war room. I gotta say, Tucker Carlson didn't need to have to do those number blurrings, and I think that speaks volumes to how much organic interest these campaigns are attracting and how entertaining these relative figures really are. I heard again, I mentioned another subject in another segment, that even among rooms and spaces with conservative voters, they were not pleased with the format because they genuinely want what Elon Musk promised. They wanted an open forum for him to be asked tough questions. And they wanted him to talk about things other than wokeness. That's not to say that they don't like the wokeness talk, but over and over again, people said, well, when are you going to talk about big substantive issues? You're the president, going to be the president of the United States. You're running to be president. Are you going to mention foreign policy? Instead, he's prioritized wokeness to the exclusion, it seems, of other issues that people care about, including on this interview that he did with Trey Gowdy on Fox News that we should take a look at to see if that's going to be indicative of how his whole candidacy is going to be.
All right, you wore the uniform. If you are elected president, you may be the first one in a while to have worn the uniform. How would you address the ongoing war in Eastern Europe between Russia and Ukraine on day one of a Ron DeSantis presidency?
Well, first, I think what we need to do as a veteran is recognize that our military has become politicized. You talk about gender ideology, you talk about things like global warming that they're somehow concerned, and that's not the military that I served in. We need to return our military to focusing on commitment, focusing on the core values and the core mission. That would be something that I could take care of on day one. There'll be a new sheriff in town as commander-in-chief, and I think you'll see recruiting start to get back to where it needs to be because people don't want to join a woke military, and I think it's been really, really problematic. Look, in terms of what's going on over in Eastern Europe, I'd like to see a settlement of this. I do not want to see a wider war. I think it's completely unknowable what it will look like in January of 2025, but I would not want to see the United States with our troops get enmeshed in a war in Russia or in Ukraine.
Yeah, that was not a very compelling answer. He didn't substantively address, are we going to, what if when he takes office, we are in substantially the same position we are now? Are we going to continue funding Ukraine? Is there going to be a different strategy? Here's what Biden has said. Here's what Trump has said. Trump has talked about Ukraine at some length. What are you going to do? What I heard there, honestly, was him trying not to alienate anyone because although I think most Republican primary voters are firmly in the we've sent Ukraine enough aid camp, it's not all of them. There is some of a split. It's more split on the Republican side than the Democratic side, but that sounded like he was just trying not to.
Robbie, he was finally asked a foreign policy question, and he spent half of it complaining about the woke military. And if that's not a demonstration of priorities that I don't think align with the bulk of Americans, I don't know what is.
Not with the bulk of Americans, but we got to win the primaries first.
With the bulk of primary voters.
I don't know about that.
I didn't hear a single person asking. This is a really important point, actually, about issue items in political voter priorities. They do not exist in a vacuum. You can do a poll that asks people, how much do you care about wokeness? Are you anti-woke? They'll say yes. That's true. But if you ask them what their voting priorities are, that's a very different thing. And just because somebody cares about something in the abstract doesn't mean that that's what's motivating them to the polls. We saw that abortion was an issue that motivated Democrats to the polls last fall. Electability being anti-Trump, that's something that motivates Democrats. Right now, what's motivating people across the ideological spectrum is anti-war sentiment. And if he can't even ask a question about being anti-war without pivoting into a spiel on wokeness, I think he's going to have a real problem with core-based voters. Even Candace Owens, by the way, she just tweeted out, stop talking to me about DeSantis' qualifications. Based on qualifications, he should have destroyed Andrew Gillum. Instead, he almost lost to an overt socialist. Why? Because Andrew Gillum has charisma. Stop deluding yourselves that the it factor matters. Obama had it.
Well, that's a different criticism, and I agree that he lacks very much in the charisma department. He doesn't have a passion for retail politics, is what everyone says when they see him interacting with voters when he's on the campaign trail, and that's going to be an issue. But I mean, again, on the wokeness front, I mean, that is an issue. Complaining about the transing of the military, whatever he was saying, is something that animates the audience he was speaking to on Fox, something that animates the DeSantinistas on Twitter. And he's got I think his theory of the campaign, which may be wrong, but I think his theory of the campaign is he needs to fire up all those people to be talking DeSantis, talking about DeSantis, pushing DeSantis, getting the name recognition out about DeSantis, because the information trickles from him to the conservative media and then out to the broader Republican primary voting electorate. That's his theory. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm still waiting to see the Republican voter who says, yeah, this I feel like this man's going to fight for me. This man understands the pulse of the country right now. This man is going to be able to fulfill the energy that Trump galvanized back in 2016. He can carry the torch. I heard callers say things like, I am a Florida resident. I really respect what Ron DeSantis has done as governor. I'm not interested in him as president of the United States. I had a conservative caller call into my show last night who said he is, I think he said a union boilermaker. He hasn't heard any of his friends or anybody in his community say anything about DeSantis that's especially positive, that he doesn't feel like he's a working class advocate. He talked about elites on in the Twitter spaces last night. At the same time, he said, also look at all these people from Oxford and Harvard who validated all of my COVID measures, which is fine. That's not a commentary on whether or not they were right or wrong. But there was some messiness of that messaging when he presents as a Yale class of 01 grad, a lawyer himself, someone who seems very much establishment, who seems to be avoiding anti-establishment.
But that's every political figure does that. But who seems to be avoiding anti-establishment topics like being anti-war. Not every candidate does that. RFK Jr. is not rhetorically doing that. Donald Trump is not rhetorically doing that. RFK Jr. is a scion of a political dynasty. Trump is a wealthy
I use the word rhetorically
person.
for a reason. Whatever you think underlying, if they're good faith or bad faith, if they're really going to act in it or not, the words that they are saying, the words that are coming out of their mouth are explicitly anti-establishment and are calling out the military-industrial complex. You cannot argue that RFK Jr. is not doing that. You can't argue that part of Trump's appeal in 2016 was that he was willing to call out U.S. interventionism and say, hey, we've got some bad folks too. And DeSantis just is not giving that energy.
He didn't substantially address the question on foreign policy, I agree, but part of calling out the elites is calling out the COVID response, which is what made him so popular in Florida. And I mean, I think there's a long history. I think Trump has done this. I think Joe Biden does this continuously. I think they all do this. I'm one of you. For Joe Biden, it's I'm Scranton Joe. For Trump, it's, I'm self-made and I don't know anything about what the elites did. But they're all elite people.
Right, but Trump isn't doing like what my mom calls the Annie Oakley thing when Hillary Clinton goes to upstate New York with a gun and acts like this is a real part of her life. Mm-hmm. Ron DeSantis referred to himself as like a working class boy or something like that in a way that's completely implausible. Trump says I'm self-made. He doesn't say I grew up in a hovel somewhere. We all know who Trump is. And self-made, I also agree, is an extreme exaggeration. Most people's parents don't give them $1 million plus to start a company. But he doesn't run away from who he is. He's the guy who came down in a golden escalator, who has a golden toilet in his house, whose name is synonymous with luxury, who has golf courses. He's the guy with the golden touch, and that's why people love him. How do I know about the tax code? Because I cheat the tax code. I beat the tax code. That's Trump. That's authentic. People like him because he says the thing that seems ill-advised, frankly, but that seems authentic to who he is, or at least his self-conception. I don't know that we know who Ron DeSantis even thinks he is.
Well, we're going to continue to find out. This will not be the first time we're hearing from DeSantis. Obviously, long road ahead of us. More Rising right after this.